Hello everyone and welcome back to another VSL serving suggestion. My name is Shannon Moore and today we will demonstrate how to use VSL's Synchron Prime Edition on an example from orchestrationrecipes.com, but this time from volume 3, which means this video will be a little different from the others in this series. Orchestration Recipes Volume 3 is still packed with orchestrations to try, but the focus is on harmonic spices you can use to inspire ideas and mess with the heads of audiences. The first example illustrates a simple sketching spice called bisected tenths. It looks like this. We're not going to cover what bisected tenths are or when or how to use this composition technique. If you are interested in this topic, just check out Volume 3 on orchestrationrecipes.com or watch the trailer in this video. One last thing before we jump into the MIDI programming stuff. Don't forget to check out our intro video linked here. It covers everything you need to know as well as the basics of the Vienna Synchron player and how we use it in this tutorial series. Now, because bisected tenths are often used for sketching, when we go to the score, we see there are no detailed instrument specifications. We decided to play back the top brass line by our 6-player horn ensemble, the second brass line by the 4-player trombone ensemble, and the third line by the tuba, doubled with a bass trombone. The score looks like this in the MIDI editor view for now. The percussion part will be added later in this video. We will start with our string ostinato accompaniment. As a first step, we select the 2D full range velocity crossfade sus preset with our wide mixer settings. The only articulation we need is the staccato bold patch. In our phrase, all notes played back are between C2 and D3. So if you click the double-headed arrow on the right side of the piano in the Synchron player, you will see how the individual string instruments are mapped out to create the ensemble patch. When you select the violins 2, you will realize that there are still 3 notes within our play range, which will trigger the violins 2 to play back. To achieve a more homogeneous sound, we decided to remove the violins 2, so either just right-click and remove them completely, or drag the range indicator for the second violin's 3 semitones upward. The double basses, as well as the first violins, are outside of our required range and will not be played back, so we are only using violas and cellos to play the string part. The most important thing for phrases like this is to make sure there is little variation in it. We use the MIDI velocity to create lots of different values. Overall, you can see that every 2-bar phrase has a slight crescendo towards the middle, followed by a decrescendo again. The loudest points are around the 4th and 8th bar, and our phrase has a longer decrescendo at the very end. Especially for the repeated second note, the velocity needs to be changed. Usually, the first note is played back louder. Remember, musicians are not robots, and little, almost inaudible imperfections are key to realistic playbacks. As a second step, we add a simple curve with our expression slider to increase the crescendos and decrescendos for our 2-bar phrases. In the finishing touches, we spice up our ostinato pattern with some more imperfections, so we set the humanized delay scaler to 21 to bring in some variation in timing. For the tuning variations, double-check that the violas and cellos have different curves assigned. So if you ever want to build your own multi-instrument preset, this is an important part to establish. Now our string section is ready to play and will sound like this. The next section we'll cover is our brass section. As we previously mentioned, we split the 3 brass lines into the 6-player horn ensemble, the 4-player trombone ensemble, and bass trombone and tuba will play the bottom line in unison. Now let's assign the instruments and mixer presets. For the top line, use horns, 6 players for velocity crossfade sus, and the wide mixer preset. The tenor line will be played back by the trombones, 4 players velocity crossfade sus, and the wide mixer preset. For the bass line, choose the bass trombone velocity crossfade sus again with the wide mixer preset and the tuba velocity crossfade sus. For the tuba, we make an exception with the wide preset. As bass instruments play very low frequencies, adding a little more reverb sounds great, which is exactly the sound the ambiance preset provides. As you can see, these 4 instruments exclusively use the legato articulation. For phrasing, we use the standard tools for legato passages. We always want a 1-bar crescendo followed by a 1-bar decrescendo to give it that swelling effect. It's important to also add a little break between the phrases. Don't forget that real players need to breathe, and this will also help to start with a clean, non-legato note at the beginning of the next note. First, we apply some modulation with CC1, taking care of the note ends, and afterwards we slightly increase this effect with expression. You can now copy and paste the velocity curves to all of the other instruments, or redraw them with minor variations. Now let's move on to our last step, the fine-tuning. We want to get an atmospheric and not too bright brass sound, so we're going to use the timbre adjust slider. The horn gets a value set to 95. The trombone playing in lower registers needs more taming, so we set it to 78, and the 2 low brass instruments don't need any adjustments. As a last step, we'll add humanization again by adjusting the humanization delay scalar sliders of all instruments to values around 20. Also slightly adjust the note ends to achieve a more realistic phrase end. Now our swelling brass part is finished and sounds like this. So let's get our final instruments, the percussion section. The original orchestration recipe uses a drum loop here. We want to achieve a similar sound and use the following 2-bar pattern. There is a constant 8th note groove played by the taiko and the low concert tom, with accents also enforced by bass and high concert drum. In addition, there is a constant sizzling snare drum pattern, and all percussion instruments play back the 16th notes crescendo on the last beat of this 2-bar pattern. This pattern translates into the following notes on the piano rolls. For an epic drum sound, we assign the concert toms preset, comp plus boom plus sat plus reverb, where an expander, a compressor, saturator, and reverb are added on the channels, as you can see in this picture on the FX bus. The concert toms are played by the high 10-inch and the low 16-inch toms. You can see lots of random variations, the accents, as well as the crescendo at the end of every second bar. The taiko, played back with the wide preset, is very similar to the low toms, but here the difference to the accented notes has been increased. The snare with the classic preset is just 16th notes with some velocity randomization, playing on the soft side of the dynamic spectrum. The bass drum, accentuating the main pulse, plays with quite constant velocity with a build-up at the end. One difference to the original drum pattern is in the snare. We want to have only the sizzling sound without the prominent stroke, so we apply a low-cut EQ at 1.31 kHz for both of the microphones. The difference is quite obvious. This is how the default preset sounds with and without these EQ settings. And here we are. This is our final drum groove. Besides the EQ changes we just applied to our snare drums, we suggest only very little changes in our final mixing steps. On our strings, we want to increase the bass fundamentals, so increase the slider of mid-cello microphone from a -6 to 1. We also want to make our string section wider. As only the violas and cellos are used, we will move the seating of the violas to the left. Open the panning page, put the center of the viola microphone to L 47%, and our players now have more space on our virtual stage. We want to highlight our horn ensemble even more and therefore increase the master volume from 95 to 108. The low drum section also can be a bit more prominent, so increase the master volume slider of the taikos and the bass drum from their default value of 113 to maximum value of 127. All other instruments are already perfectly balanced and don't need any adjustments. In this example, we're making an exception by not adding a dedicated tempo track. Shocking, I know. This makes the piece very tight, as the little variations from the humanization delay of the individual instruments are sufficient enough to avoid the typical robotic sound. So now we are coming to the end of our piece, where we learn to create an epic sounding brass and string piece with a percussion section to make it even bigger. And this is how it sounds. And that's it for our video. This was the very first bisected 10th example out of Orchestration Recipes Volume 3. Don't forget to check out orchestrationrecipes.com for lots more uses of this spice, as well as previews of other spices such as sunken minors and dislocated tethers. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.